The arrow was meant for his heart. It found mine instead. I did not think. Thinking is slow. Thinking is for people who have time, who have futures and plans and reasons to calculate risk. I had none of those things. I had a body between his body and a piece of sharpened iron cutting through the air at the speed of a held breath, and I put myself in the path of it the way water fills a hole, naturally, without decision, because it was the only shape that made sense. The arrowhead entered below my left collarbone, 3 inches of iron and fletching buried in the space between my shoulder and my lung. I heard the sound before I felt the pain. A wet, solid thud, like a fist hitting a sack of grain. Then the pain. White. Total. The kind that erases language and replaces it with a single ringing note that fills your skull and does not stop. I fell, not dramatically, not slowly. The way a person falls when their legs simply stop receiving instructions. Crumpled, sideways, hitting the mud of the battlefield with my face before my hands could catch me. The last thing I saw before the world went dark was his face. The Alpha King of Iron March, looking down at me with an expression I had never seen directed at me before. He was seeing me for the first time, and I was dying. But I should tell you how a nameless soldier ended up between an arrow and a king. Because the arrow is not where this story begins. The story begins with a woman who was invisible, and a war that made her visible at the exact moment it killed her. My name is Ren Veldari. I was 23, the lowest-ranked soldier in the Iron March Border Guard. No wolf lineage of note, no family connections, no one who mattered enough to mention at a council table. My mother was a seamstress from the outer settlement, the ring of houses beyond the inner walls where wolves without rank lived like afterthoughts. She mated a border guard named Hale Veldari, who died in a skirmish when I was 11. A messenger came to our door, handed my mother his patrol badge, and said Alpha Valdris extends his condolences. My father's life reduced to a sentence and a piece of tin. My mother died when I was 17. Fever. The healers from the inner territory arrived 2 days late. She was gone by the time they crossed the wall. I joined the border guard at 18. I could fight, not elegantly, not with polished technique. I fought the way settlement wolves fight, with awareness, endurance, and the ferocity of someone who knows no one is coming to help. I was good, fast enough to compensate for my size. Smart enough to read a battlefield the way my mother read fabric, spotting weak seams, the places where the pattern would tear. I could track scent through rain and move without sound through forests that cracked under heavier wolves. No one noticed. The border guard consumed wolves and produced security and did not care about the names of its components. I was badge number 47. Night patrol. The shifts no one wanted in the territory no one watched. The military designation for where I lived was Outer Ring. The wolves who lived there called it the settlement. Same place. Different name depending on whether you were looking down at it or up from inside it. For 5 years, I guarded a kingdom that did not know I existed. Alpha Soren Valdris. I saw him for the first time at a border inspection when I was 20. He rode through the outer patrol line with his council. 6 wolves on horseback, surveying the northern perimeter after a Duskfang incursion had tested the boundary. The inner guard wolves snapped to attention, crisp salutes, polished armor, the performance of discipline for an audience that mattered. My patrol, the settlement wolves, stood in a mud-spattered line in leather that had been repaired so many times it was more stitching than hide. We did not snap. We held still and hoped we would not be noticed, because being noticed by leadership usually meant being reprimanded for something we could not afford to fix. Soren rode past our line. He did not look at us. His eyes swept the perimeter, the tree line, the watch posts, the terrain. Tactical assessment. His gaze moved through our formation like wind through grass. We bent. He did not notice the bending, but I noticed him. Amber eyes, not gold. Amber, the color of tree resin with light trapped inside it. A face built for command. Sharp jaw, heavy brow, the kind of structure that does not soften with age but hardens into authority. Dark hair cut short for combat, a scar across his right hand, Old, faded, the mark of a wolf who had fought before he was old enough to know what fighting cost. He was beautiful, the way a weapon is beautiful, functional, precise, designed for a single purpose and perfected through use. My wolf noticed him before my mind could form the word. She pressed forward, not lunging, not howling, leaning, the way a compass needle leans toward north, an orientation, a direction, not a choice, a fact, like gravity, like tides answering the moon. I pressed her down, hard, because a wolf from the settlement does not lean toward an alpha king. A settlement wolf keeps her eyes forward and her compass locked in a drawer. He rode past. He did not see me. He did not smell me. The wind was wrong, carrying his scent to me instead of mine to him. Cedar, iron, the cold, clean bite of mountain stone, a scent that entered my lungs and rearranged something fundamental, like an earthquake rearranging furniture. Everything in the same room, nothing in the same place. I stood in that mud-spattered line and I breathed and I told myself it was nothing. A reaction, a glitch. The random firing of a wolf's instinct in proximity to power, it was not nothing. But I had years of practice at pretending things that mattered did not matter. So I added this to the list. The war with Duskfang escalated slowly, then all at once. Border skirmishes became raids. Raids became coordinated assaults. The Duskfang Alpha, a brutal, calculating wolf named Cale Durant, had spent 3 years quietly building alliances with the Eastern Mountain Packs. And by the time Iron March intelligence confirmed the coalition, the northern border was already bleeding. I fought in 7 engagements before anyone learned my name. 7. In the first, I held a watchtower alone for 9 hours after my partner took an arrow through his throat. When the relief unit arrived, the captain said, "Good work, soldier." He did not ask my name. In the third, I pulled 2 inner guard wolves from a collapsed trench during a night assault. When the medics arrived, the 2 wolves thanked the border patrol. Not me, the machine, not the woman inside it. In the 5th, I identified the weak point in a Duskfang ambush, the gap between their left flank and the tree cover. The field commander used the information. 11 wolves survived. The report was filed under Patrol Intelligence General. No name. I was not angry. Anger requires the belief that things should be different. I did not believe that. I believed inner wolves were seen. Settlement wolves were used, and the wall between them was permanent. The battle at Cold Marsh. Duskfang committed its full force. 500 wolves against Iron March 300. Their alpha, Cale Durant, was on the field personally. This was not a raid. This was the war that would end today. Soren led from the front. His inner guard flanked him. His Beta Tauren held the right line. The border patrol was assigned to the left flank, the expendable flank, the side Duskfang would hit hardest because their strategist Varys always attacked the weakest point first. We were the weakest point. The assignment was not strategy. It was arithmetic. Spend the cheap units first. I stood in the mud with my iron sword, repaired 3 times, the edge holding because I sharpened it every night with a river stone the way my mother taught me to sharpen her sewing shears. Duskfang hit the left flank first. We did not break. I fought for 2 hours. My arms burned. My wolf was running hot. The animal and the soldier operating the same body in shifts based on which was faster in the moment. The line held. Barely. We lost wolves, settlement wolves whose names I knew and whose families lived in the same streets where my mother had sewn dresses and my father had polished his patrol badge every morning. Wolves who mattered to me. Wolves who mattered to no report. And then I saw it. Soren was in the center, fighting. His inner guard around him, his sword cutting through the Duskfang line with the mechanical precision of a man who has been trained to kill since he could hold a blade. He was magnificent. I hate that I noticed that in the middle of a battle, but the wolf notices what the wolf notices, and my wolf was leaning toward him even now, even in the mud and blood and chaos, like a compass that does not care about the weather. Behind the Duskfang front line, 30 yards back, hidden in the tree line, an archer. Not a soldier, an assassin. positioned during the chaos, waiting for the gap, the single moment when Soren's guard would shift and his chest would be open. I saw the archer draw. I saw the angle. I knew. The way you know a seam will tear before it tears, the way you read the weak point in a formation, that the arrow would find him. His guard was engaged. Torin was 20 feet to the right. No one was watching the tree line because the tree line was behind the enemy line, and no one expected a shooter inside their own formation. No one except a wolf who had spent 5 years watching from positions no one else valued. I ran, not toward the archer, toward Soren, because the arrow was already in the air by the time my legs started moving, and killing the archer would not stop the iron already flying. The only thing between the arrow and the Alpha King's heart was 30 feet of open ground and one nameless soldier who had spent her entire life being invisible and was about to become the most visible thing on the battlefield. I covered the distance in seconds. I did not think. My wolf did not think. We moved the way iron moves toward a magnet, pulled, not pushed, the body obeying a force that has no interest in permission. The arrow hit me below the left collarbone. I felt it enter. The initial punch, then the tearing, then the deep structural wrongness of foreign metal inside living flesh. The world tasted like copper. The air smelled like rain and iron and the particular sweetness of blood that has not yet cooled. The pain was not sharp. It was absolute, like being erased from the inside out. I fell into him, my body colliding with his, my weight knocking him sideways, his arms instinctively catching me because a warrior's body catches what falls near it before the mind identifies what it is. He caught me. The impact pressed my face against his chest plate. Cold iron, the smell of cedar underneath, the vibration of his heartbeat through the metal. The heartbeat I had just saved. Strong, fast, alive. Mine was slowing, and for the first time in my life, the Alpha King of Ironmarch was looking at my face. "Who are you?" His voice, close. The words vibrating through his chest into mine because he was holding me against him, one arm around my back, the other pressing against the arrow wound, his hand already red with my blood. My wolf, the one who had been leaning toward him for 3 years, finally reached him, not in a lunge, in a collapse. She pressed against the inside of my ribs and reached for his wolf and the bond that had been locked in a drawer, the compass pointing north that I had never allowed to speak, opened. I felt it hit him. The recognition. The snap of a mate bond activating in the worst possible moment, on a battlefield, in the mud, with an arrow in the woman who had just saved his life and whose name he did not know. His eyes changed. Amber to gold. The wolf surging forward, the animal recognizing its mate at the exact moment it was losing her. I felt his wolf howl inside his chest, not audible, not a sound, a vibration, the whole body tremor of a wolf finding and losing in the same breath. "Who are you?" He asked it again, desperate now. His hand pressing harder against the wound, the blood running between his fingers, hot and steady and leaving. "Rhine," I said. My voice was wet. The arrow was close to my lung. I could feel the air going wrong, not enough of it, the wrong shape, the breath catching on something sharp inside me. Rin Valdari. Outer ring. Badge 47. I gave him my rank. Even dying, I gave him my rank. Because that is what outer ring wolves do. We identify ourselves by our function, not our names. Our names are not on any report. His face cracked. The command structure, the alpha mask, the general's composure, fractured along a line that ran from his eyes to his jaw, and the sound that came out of him was not a word. It was grief hitting air before grief has been named. "Stay," he said, as if the word could stop blood from leaving. As if a single syllable spoken by a desperate man could override the iron in my chest and the cold in my feet and the dark at the edges of everything. "Stay with me, Rin. Stay, my name." In his mouth, spoken like it mattered, spoken like it was the only word in any language that meant anything. The sound of it. Rin. 2 letters, 1 syllable. The smallest name for the smallest wolf, filled the space between us like warmth, like light. like the opposite of the cold that was creeping up from my feet. I wanted to stay. My wolf wanted to stay. The bond, new, raw, screaming, wanted me to stay. Every cell in my body that was still receiving instructions wanted to stay in this man's arms with his hand on my wound, and my name in his mouth, and the mate bond singing between us like a note that had been waiting 23 years to be struck. But the blood was leaving, and the air was wrong, and the edges of the world were going gray, then white, then nothing. I stopped breathing. I did not die. I spent 3 days in the dark, not alive and not dead, suspended in the nothing while healers fought for my body and a mate bond fought for my soul. They told me later, every wolf who was there. They told me like it was scripture. Soren did not leave my side. Not once. 3 days. The battle ended. Iron March won. Durant retreated. The war was over, and the Alpha King was kneeling in a medical tent with his hand on the chest of a dying soldier whose badge number he had memorized because he refused to say it like a number. 47, stay with me. 47, breathe. The healers told him to leave. He did not. The council told him there were treaties to negotiate. He said, do it without me. Torin knelt beside him on the second night. Soren, you need to eat. You are the Alpha. Soren looked at him with eyes that were no longer amber, gold, pure wolf gold. The eyes of an animal that has found its mate and will not leave. She has been in my territory for 5 years, Soren said. She fought in 7 engagements. She held a tower alone for 9 hours. She pulled 2 wolves from a trench. She spotted the gap that saved 11 lives, and I did not know her name. His voice cracked. She took an arrow meant to kill me, and I did not know her name. I am the Alpha. I am supposed to see every wolf, and I did not see her until she was dying to save me. He pressed his hand against my chest, over the wound. If she dies, I will carry that name as a conviction. Rhine Veldari, the wolf I did not see. The wolf who saw me clearly enough to die for me. I will carry it the way she carried that arrow. Inside me, where it will never stop hurting, where it will remind me every day that I failed the most basic duty of an Alpha. I failed to see. He stayed, 3 days, on the floor, the mate bond humming between us, faint, a thread held taut by one person, while the other was somewhere in the dark trying to find her way back. I woke on the 3rd morning, not dramatically, not with a gasp or a surge. I opened my eyes and the light was gray. Dawn, early, the color of a world that has not yet decided if it will be kind or cruel today. His face was the first thing I saw. His eyes, 3 days of no sleep carved into the lines around them, his hand still on my chest. He had not moved it. The warmth of his palm over the wound that was closed now, scarred, a ridge of new skin that would never fully smooth. You are the worst soldier I have ever seen, he said. His voice was raw, destroyed. The voice of a man who has been talking to an unconscious woman for 3 days and has run out of every word except the honest ones. You broke formation. You abandoned your flank. You ran across open ground with no shield and no plan, and you put yourself between an arrow and an Alpha who was wearing armor thick enough to stop it. I looked at him. At the eyes that were wet and red and furious and relieved and something else, something deeper than all of those, the look of a wolf who has found its mate and is terrified and grateful and angry, that it took a war and an arrow and 3 days of not breathing to make the introduction. The armor had a gap, I said. My voice was gravel. 3 days of silence had rusted it. The arrow was aimed at the seam between your chest plate and shoulder guard, left side. The gap is 3 inches wide. Your armorer has not corrected it because your armorer does not fight on the left flank. I do. He stared at me, the anger draining, replaced by something worse, understanding. The understanding of a man who has just realized that the woman who saved his life was not acting on impulse, she was acting on intelligence. She had studied his armor from a distance. She knew its weaknesses better than the man who wore it. She had been watching for years, in silence, from a position no one valued. "How long?" he asked. "How long what? How long have you been watching me?" I could have lied. I could have said I noticed the armor gap during the battle. But I was a soldier with a hole in her chest and a mate bond she had kept locked for 3 years, and no energy left for anything except the truth. Since the border inspection, I said, 3 years ago, you rode past our patrol line. You did not see us. You did not see me. But I saw the gap in your armor, and I noted it because I note everything about every wolf who passes through my sector. Because that is my job, and I am good at my job, and no one has ever asked me about. My job because no one has ever asked me anything. The silence after that was the kind that has a sound, a low, constant ringing, the frequency of two people hearing each other clearly for the first time. He took his hand off my chest, not pulling away, relocating. He reached for my hand, the one with the calluses from the iron sword and the riverstone sharpening, and the 5 years of gripping things because there was nothing else to hold on to. He held it, not gently, firmly, the grip of a man who has learned that gentle is not always what someone needs. Sometimes what someone needs is to be held like they are real, like they are solid, like they exist. "I see you," he said. "Rin Veldari, Badge 47, Outer Ring, Night Patrol. I see you." 3 words. The 3 words I had spent my entire life not knowing I was waiting to hear. Not, "I love you." Those come later. Those are built on a foundation. Those require time. "I see you." The foundation itself. The acknowledgement that a person exists, that they are present. That they have been present all along and the failure was not theirs. It was the world's, for not looking. "I see you, my wolf." The one who had been leaning north for 3 years finally arrived. Recovery took weeks. The arrow had nicked my lung. The healers said it was a miracle I survived at all, and a second miracle that the scar tissue was closing cleanly. I spent 14 days in the medical ward, and every day Soren was there, not hovering, present. The kind of presence that does not announce itself, it simply does not leave. He brought me reports. Actual military reports. The engagement summaries from the 7 battles I had fought in. He had pulled them from the archives and discovered what I already knew. My name appeared in none of them. 7 engagements, 0 attribution. He read them aloud to me, one by one. And after each one he said, "Who did this?" And I told him. And he wrote my name in the margin, in his own handwriting. Every report. Every margin. Ryan Veldari. He was correcting the record, not for politics, not for appearances. Because a wolf who fights 7 battles and saves 11 lives deserves to exist in the history of the territory she bled for. On the 7th day, he brought me something else, not a report. A patrol badge, new, not tin, silver, with my name engraved, not Badge 47, Ryan Veldari, Inner Guard, by order of the Alpha. I held it in my hands and I cried, not because of the promotion, because of the engraving, my name, on something permanent, on something that would not be handed to a stranger in a doorway with a single sentence of condolences. "My mother would have liked that," I said. "Tell me about her," he said. I told him about the seamstress, about the settlement, about the 2-day wait for healers and the tin badge and the sentence of condolences. I told him about the sewing shears and the river stone and the way she taught me to find weak seams. I told him about growing up on the other side of the wall, the side that is not a place on any map but a feeling. The feeling of being close enough to see the kingdom you protect and far enough to know it will never protect you back. He listened. Not the way an alpha listens to a briefing, with efficiency and action items, with real attention, human attention. His body angled toward me, his eyes on my face. The particular stillness of a man who is hearing something he should have heard years ago and knows it. "I am going to tear that wall down," he said, not metaphorically. He meant the wall, the physical wall between the inner territory and the settlement, the wall that divided his pack into seen and unseen, named and numbered. "You cannot," I said. "The council will resist. The inner pack will resist. The infrastructure. I am the alpha, he said, and I did not see a wolf who was willing to die for me because a wall told me she was not worth seeing. The wall is wrong. The wall comes down. He said it the way he said, stay on the battlefield, not as a plan. As a fact, something that was already true and was simply waiting for the world to catch up. I do not want the wall torn down because of me, I said. He stopped, looked at me. The amber shifted, not to gold, to something quieter, listening. I want it torn down because it is wrong, I said. If you are doing this for me, it is a gesture. If you are doing it because every wolf behind that wall has been invisible, not just the one who took your arrow, then it is governance. And governance lasts longer than guilt. He was silent for a long time. The silence of a man who has just been corrected by the woman in the hospital bed and is realizing she is right. Every wolf, he said. Not just you. Every wolf. That was the moment I knew the wall would actually fall. Not when he declared it. When he heard why it mattered. The wall came down. Not in a day, in a season. Stone by stone. Soren dismantled the two-tier system that had divided Iron March for generations. Settlement wolves were integrated into the inner guard. Patrol routes restructured. The healer network expanded. No more 2-day waits. The council resisted. Alder Voss stood in the chamber and said the settlement wolves are untrained, unpolished, unfit for inner positions. Soren looked at him. Then he looked at me, then back at Voss. You received the engagement reports I amended last week, he said. Every margin, every name I wrote in where the original report wrote nothing. Read them, then tell me which wolves are unfit. Voss did not speak again. I stood in that council chamber, first time in the room, silver badge on my chest, the scar below my collarbone, visible above my collar, and heard an Alpha King use my actions as the reason to reshape his entire territory. He marked me on a night in late autumn, not a ceremony, not a public display, a private moment in the quarters that were now ours. Mine and his, the inner guard quarters that still smelled like cedar and mountain stone, and the new addition of iron and river water, which was my scent, the scent of a wolf who had sharpened her sword with a stone every night for 5 years. The bond had been building since the battlefield, growing, thickening. The thread becoming a rope, becoming a bridge that our wolves crossed back and forth constantly, his wolf pressing into mine, mine leaning into his. The compass finally allowed to point where it had always pointed. He asked permission. I want you to know that. He did not assume. He did not claim. He stood in front of me with the vulnerability of a man who has spent his entire life commanding and is now requesting, and he asked, "May I mark you?" I said yes, not because of the bond. Not because he was the alpha, because he had written my name in 7 margins, because he had torn down a wall, because he had sat on the floor of a medical tent for 3 days with his hand on my chest saying 47, stay with me, before he knew my name and still meaning it, because he saw me, not the soldier, not the function, me, Rhine, the seamstress's daughter from the outer ring who sharpened her sword with a river stone and watched the world from positions no one valued and saw everything. He marked me, the bite at the junction of my neck and shoulder, ancient, traditional, the seal of a bond that would last as long as both wolves breathed. I felt it sink through my skin and into my blood, and the sensation was not pain, it was completion. The sound of a key turning in a lock that has been waiting. My wolf made a sound that was not a howl, it was a sigh. The long, full-body sigh of an animal that has been holding its breath for 3 years and has finally been told it is allowed to exhale. I marked him back, on the same spot, my teeth on his skin. The taste of him, salt, cedar, the warm iron of a man who has spent his life being strong and is only now learning what it feels like to let someone close enough to leave a mark. He shattered under my mouth, not from pain, from trust. The particular tremor of a body allowing itself to be vulnerable for the first time. Beautiful souls. She blocked the arrow. She stopped breathing, and the man she had been watching for 3 years looked at her face for the first time and realized that the most important wolf in his territory was the one he had never seen. She was not invisible because she was small. She was invisible because the world had built a wall and called it hierarchy and told her she belonged on the far side of it. She belonged there until she didn't, until she bled. Until the blood was the same color as the blood of every wolf on the other side of the wall, and the king finally understood that rank does not determine value. Sacrifice does. If someone has looked through you, if someone has walked past your line without seeing your face, if you have held towers alone and pulled wolves from trenches and spotted the gaps that saved lives and never once been named in the report, this story is yours. You are not invisible. You are unlooked at. And there is a difference. Invisible means you cannot be seen. Unlooked at means someone has not yet done the work of looking. And when they do, when they finally turn their head and see you standing there, covered in mud and blood and 5 years of silence, it will not be because you became more visible. It will be because they became brave enough to look. Where are you listening from tonight? Some wolves are born into the inner ring. Some wolves fight their way in. And some wolves take an arrow for a king who does not know their name and teach him that the wall he built was the most dangerous enemy he ever faced. Sweet dreams. Beautiful souls. She was never invisible. The world was just not brave enough to look.